Hey gang, I'm Steve from Gen X Horror. Today we're diving into the leg-warmer-laden, double-synthesizer-scored wasteland of 1980s campy cult horror. Those movies that lived in the dusty back corners of your hometown's video store. The ones with lurid VHS covers that promised everything you wanted, but rarely delivered. But man, when they did. These are the flicks that define those legendary Friday night sleepovers when you'd sneak down to catch them on USA Up All Night, praying your parents wouldn't wake up and ruin the vibe. So grab your biggest bowl of popcorn or some fruit roll-ups and let's count down some of the most gloriously unhinged horror movies that made the 1980s absolutely iconic.
Something strange happened to Tony's dad.
Team, we're going to start with 1982's Xtro with the IMDb of 5.6, and this one actually won an award in 1983 for its practical effects. This was the VHS that sat spine out on the sci-fi horror shelf at Family Video. Its cover practically screaming "Rent Me" with the tagline, "When Tony grows up, he's gonna be just like Daddy." When a father gets abducted by aliens and returns 3 years later to impregnate a woman who births him as a fully grown adult man covered in afterbirth, you know you're in for something special. And damn, is that special. The dad then goes on a quest to transform his young son into an alien creature because it's just good parenting. Director Harry Bromley Davenport crafted this nightmare on a tiny budget, creating some of the most disturbing practical effects and body horror ever committed to film, including the birthing scene that makes Alien's chest burster look like a Disney movie. The film became notorious for being banned in several countries, which only made rental store clerks more eager to recommend it to unsuspecting customers. This one's insane.
I just found the school bus about 100 yards from the Google place. Motor's still running. No Fred, no kids.
Welcome to 1980's The Children. This is an IMDb of 5.4, and we are going in descending order of IMDb, so it's only going to get better. This film was the movie hiding in the horror section that made you do a double take. The VHS looked like a page from a Nancy Drew novel with the artist's rendering of the kids' faces. A nuclear accident turns a busload of elementary school kids into zombified killers with black fingernails who hug their victims to death, literally cooking them from the inside out, like a little microwave hug. It's basically Stand By Me meets Dawn of the Dead. You want to see a dead body? Or do you want to make a dead body? Made for roughly the cost of a used car, the director created one of the most genuinely unsettling killer kids movies of the decade, predating Children of the Corn by 4 years. The film's low-budget charm and genuinely creepy atmosphere made it a staple of late-night cable programming throughout the 80s and even the 90s. The haunting scenes of kids with their arms outstretched will stick with you for days.
They're responsible for the death of 15 or more kids and 3 of my police officers.
1986 gave us Neon Maniacs with a 5.0 on IMDb. And this was that mysterious VHS with the wild cover art that you'd find filed under N and wonder how the hell it ended up in your suburban video store. 12 different monsters emerged from under the Golden Gate Bridge to terrorize San Francisco, each one representing a different theme. There's a biker, a samurai, a caveman, and even one that looks like he stepped out of the medieval times off the expressway. The creature can only be killed by water, which would be convenient if anyone in the movie could figure that out before the third act. Shot entirely in San Francisco on a budget that went 100% to the creatures created. The film features some wonderfully cheesy practical effects and really creative monster costumes, despite, or perhaps because of, its obvious limitations. Neon Maniacs developed a devoted cult following who appreciated its anything-goes approach to urban monster mayhem. The costumes were top-notch.
Prepare yourself for the ultimate battle. Galaxy of Terror.
Galaxy of Terror came out in 1981, and it got a flat 5.0 on IMDb as well. And this was the space horror flick that you grabbed when Alien wasn't available, not knowing you were about to witness something way more unhinged than Ridley Scott ever dared to film. A rescue mission to a mysterious planet turns into a nightmare when the crew discovers that their deepest fears are literally manifesting in front of them, including an infamous scene where a giant space worm has its way with a female crew member that pushed the boundaries a little bit of what could be shown in an R-rated movie. Produced by none other than Roger Corman and featuring early work from James Cameron, who handled the art direction and some secondary unit work. The film was made to capitalize on the success of Alien, but ended up creating its own bizarre, weird legacy. The movie's elaborate set design and creature effects were genuinely impressive for its modest budget, proving that Corman knew how to stretch a buck even better than anyone in Hollywood did.
Nothing ever seems to change, but here, nothing is what it seems.
In 1987, we have The Curse, with an IMDb of 5.0. When a meteorite crashes on a Tennessee farm, it contaminates the water supply and turns the local produce into grotesque mutations, while the farm family slowly transforms into something that makes the Hills Have Eyes clan look almost like the Brady Bunch. Will Wheaton stars as the kid who somehow stays normal while everyone around him develops boils, festering sores, and an appetite for eating rotten food with disturbing enthusiasm. This one's based on H.P. Lovecraft's The Color Out of Space. The film was shot in rural Alabama with a cast of mostly unknown actors who threw themselves into their grotesque transformations with super admirable commitment. Director David Keith created some genuinely stomach-churning body horror effects that rivaled much bigger productions. And hey, sometimes the most effective scares come from practical makeup and committed performances.
It started as a simple vacation, a trip to paradise.
We're looking now at Death Warmed Up with an IMDb of 4.6. This one came out in 1984. This was the New Zealand import that somehow made its way to American video stores, sitting there like an exotic artifact from the other side of the world, where apparently everyone was just as demented as we were in the States. A young man gets brainwashed into killing his parents, then seeks revenge on the mad scientist responsible by infiltrating his island laboratory where human experimentation has created a bunch of cybernetic psychos with power tools for hands. That's awesome. Made for practically nothing by first-time director David Blythe, the film became New Zealand's first real exploitation horror movie and somehow secured international distribution despite being completely insane. The practical effects and stunt work were surprisingly elaborate for such a low-budget production. Death Warmed Up proves that when you're working on the other side of the world with no money and complete creative freedom, you can create something that's absolutely insane and undeniably entertaining.
It's all set. There's even a full moon tonight.
Hang on, gang. 1984's The Power. This got an IMDb of 4.5. This was the psychic thriller that got lost between the Stephen King adaptations and the slasher films, waiting for someone brave enough to rent something with absolutely no recognizable stars on the front or back cover. Ancient Aztec spirits possess people through an idol, giving them telekinetic powers they use to murder anyone who gets in their way, including a memorable scene where someone gets killed by a possessed doll. The film follows a journalist investigating these supernatural murders while trying not to become the next victim of flying objects and spontaneous combustion. Director Stephen Carpenter and Jeffrey Obro crafted the supernatural thriller as a follow-up to their previous film, The Dorm That Dripped Blood, creating some impressively orchestrated death scenes on a modest budget. The film's blend of ancient mysticism and modern murder mystery give it a unique flavor that set it apart from the slasher movies dominating horror at the time.
Town of Pottsville, Idaho.
Dr. Jones, isn't the dumping of radioactive waste into the aquifer contaminating our drinking water?
The Bean came out in 1983, and it got an IMDb of 4.2 when it did. And this was the creature feature that promised the ultimate terror has taken form. Said it right there on the VHS box, and somehow that ridiculous tagline was the most normal thing about the entire movie. Toxic waste, here we go again, in a small Idaho town creates a mutant monster that looks like what would happen if the Blob had a baby with like a pile of melted cheese. And this thing starts eating residents while the mayor tries to cover up the whole mess for economic reasons, obviously. Director Jackie Kong assembled an impressive cast of character actors, including Martin Landau and Dorothy Malone, and somehow convinced them to take this radioactive monster movie seriously, creating a film that works both as genuine horror and a little unintentional comedy. The creature effects are genuinely grotesque, featuring some memorably disgusting kill scenes that prove practical effects artists in the 80s were not afraid to get their hands dirty.
Hell, I ain't never seen lightning like that before.
1982 gave us Night Beast with an IMDb of 4.2. This was the Don Dohler space monster movie that somehow made it from Baltimore to video stores nationwide, proving that regional filmmaking could reach audiences even before the internet existed. An alien creature crashes in rural Maryland and starts vaporizing locals with its ray gun while looking like a cross between a lizard and a rejected Star Trek kind of costume, leading to a showdown between a small-town sheriff and intergalactic hunter that plays like a really weird episode of the Andy Griffith Show. The alien's weapon literally disintegrates people, leaving behind empty clothes in what has to be the most cost-effective death effect in horror movie history. Well done. Shot in and around Baltimore with local actors and an anemic budget, Doller created a genuinely entertaining B-movie that captured the spirit of 1950s creature features while adding just enough 80s gore to keep things interesting. Wait, hold on. Let's just take a moment for whatever this scene's about. This is incredible. 1982's Deadly Eyes. IMDb a 4 flat. This was the nature gone wrong movie that made you think twice about every rat you saw scurrying around your basement after watching on late night cable, and I hope you didn't have rats in your basement. Giant mutant rats that were literally played by dachshunds in rat costumes, because that made perfect casting sense at the time, terrorized Toronto after eating contaminated grain. Probably toxic contamination, right? Leading to scenes of rats attacking a movie theater full of people in what has to be one of the most unintentionally hilarious monster attacks ever filmed. The film takes itself completely seriously, though, while asking audiences to believe that wiener dogs in rat suits are genuinely terrifying predators. Based on James Herbert's novel, The Rats, the film was shot in Toronto with a surprisingly decent budget that somehow couldn't stretch to convincing rat puppets, leading to the infamous decision to dress up small dogs as rodents. The result is a movie that's simultaneously ridiculously and oddly endearing, especially when you realize the rats are wagging their tails during attack scenes.
She did not know she was calling evil spirits of the past.
Little dachshunds in rat suits. 1983 gave us Scalps. This is getting low now, IMDb of 3.9. And this was the Native American revenge horror film that somehow made its way from the dusty bottom shelf of the horror section into your VHS player. Probably because you'd already rented everything else and were feeling adventurous and you were ready to dig deep. The spirit of an ancient Native American warrior possesses modern-day descendants to get revenge on the white descendants of cavalry soldiers, leading to scalping scenes that were way more graphic than anything this low-budget production had any right to include. Director Fred Olen Ray convinced a cast of B-movie veterans to participate in this beautiful, conceptual nightmare, creating a film that's a little exploitive and oddly respectful of Native American mythology. The practical effects work is surprisingly effective for such a low-budget production, with some super cringe-worthy scalping sequences that earn the film its cult following. Scalps proves that the 1980s were a time when literally any premise could become a horror movie.
It was supposed to be a long weekend in the woods, filled with wild fun.
1985 has Evils of the Night with a 3.9. This was the sci-fi horror hybrid that somehow assembled a cast including Aldo Ray, Neville Brand, and Tina Louise on what was clearly everyone's rent money budget, creating a film that's more fascinating for who's in it than what actually happens. Alien scientists hire elderly mechanics to kidnap teenagers so they can harvest their blood for youth serum. I mean, that's awesome. The film plays like a cross between a 1950s B-movie and a 1980s slasher. It's complete with gratuitous nudity and kill scenes that suggest the filmmakers had a great grasp of what makes a horror movie, but maybe not what makes them work well together. Director Marty Russman somehow convinced these veteran actors to appear in what is essentially a really elaborate teenagers in peril kind of movie, where respected character actors deliver dialogue about alien blood harvesting with complete straight faces. The film's weird blend of science fiction and slasher elements gives it a unique flavor that's unlike anything else from that decade.
What's the matter with this pair, Buster?
Hello. I love this one. This is 1986's Breeders with a 3.8. This was the alien invasion movie that someone likely misshelved in the dog breeders section, where people could accidentally rent it thinking it was about dog breeding or something agricultural. Aliens that look like they're wearing garbage bags possess men to impregnate women for some kind of intergalactic breeding program, leading to scenes that push the boundaries of what could legally be called a horror movie rather than something requiring a completely different video store section behind beaded curtains. The film attempts to create suspense around an alien invasion plot while spending most of its runtime on activities that have nothing to do with traditional movie scares. The film somehow secured distribution and found its way to video stores where unsuspecting horror fans would discover it wasn't quite the alien invasion movie the cover had suggested. Breeders represents the absolute furthest edge of what could be classified as 1980s horror cinema, making even Evils of the Night look like a masterpiece of narrative construction and good taste in comparison. I love Breeders, this is great.
I don't care if you're sick. You have to come in tonight. We're out of employees. I mean, right now.
Blood Theater came out in 1984 and it garnered a 3.4. It's a movie theater slasher that you'd find between legitimate horror movies, probably because even the video store clerks weren't quite sure what to do with this one. It's an old movie theater that becomes possessed by the spirit of its deceased owner, who starts killing people in ways that somehow relate to the classic films being shown on the screen, creating a meta horror experience that's, I guess it's more confusing than it is clever. It's a great idea though. Shot in an actual abandoned theater with a cast of unknowns and a script that seems to have been written during production, the film creates an interesting atmosphere, but it never quite figures out how to use its unique setting effectively. The kills are creative enough to hold interest, but the film's attempts at deeper meaning fall flat when the budget clearly couldn't support the ambitions of the script.
College life is one big party. And Julie is a very popular girl.
This is 1988's The Necromancer, which nailed a 2.8. This was the supernatural horror flick that sat in the dusty corner of the horror section. Its sultry cover art of a woman's nails scratching across a man's back, promising something way more unhinged than advertised. When simple revenge is not enough. A young woman discovers she has the power to raise the dead after a traumatic incident, leading to zombie mayhem in what appears to be suburban California locations that were clearly chosen more for their availability than their atmospheric potential. The film blends supernatural horror with slasher elements, resulting in undead creatures that look like they were designed to get the point across at least. It's not horrible, but it's not groundbreaking either. It was shot on a minimalist budget with a cast of unknowns and special effects that seem to have been created using Halloween store supplies. The film somehow maintains a serious tone despite featuring some of the most unconvincing zombie horror in makeup history. The practical effects range from admirably ambitious to hilariously inept, often within the same scene. Man, walking down the aisles of Family Video or Blockbuster, these would be the most gloriously unhinged horror movies that made the 1980s the absolute banger golden age of what were they thinking. These movies might not have won any Oscars, but they sure as hell won our hearts with their complete commitment to absolute insanity. We were there for all of it. Which one of these videos do you guys recall? Do you actually have sleepovers like I did, watching horror movies with your buds in the basement? Or did you watch these by yourself in your bedroom, on your little black and white TV, where no one could see? Comment any movies I 100% missed, and expose the rest of us to a complete unknown title. Thanks for watching all. Love you, and as always, stay cool.